Hi everyone, I'm very excited to host Mustapha, co-founder of Ladybug. I had the opportunity to meet Mustapha in person at AEC Tech last November, and it was so much inspiring to learn from him what these guys are doing at Ladybug, Pollination, and he was very supportive. So I really appreciate all the things you're doing for the community and in the AEC Tech space. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Mustafa, before we move on, can you talk a bit about your background, where you grew up, and out of all things you can do in life, why you chose to be in AEC?
Okay, going that back. So I was born in a small city north of Iran, next to the Caspian Sea, called Roudsari, which is like last part of my family. Roudsari comes from there. But I lived in so many different cities because of my dad changing job, and I went to so from the first to fifth class, the school I went to seven different schools in four different cities. So it's kind of like I think the equal here in the U.S. is army brat kind of person. Like yeah, every year new school, new city, new home, like all these things. You either sit next to the person who no one wants to sit to next to, or you sit next to the other person who is new. So it was always like a start from scratch, and then knowing that in a year I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then I grew up all over in Iran. I made a mistake going to architecture school after. So in Iran, the way it works is you do a national exam. So you pick a track. Is it like math and physics? I don't know what's the. Do you have another? There are three, and then from each you can go. So physics and math, you can be engineering, and one of the thing interesting enough, you can do architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I like when you do it's based on your rank. So people who rank where I ranked is usually you go and become an electrical engineer. Like that's people pick to go to sheriff. Like that's just like the thing. If you're lower than top, if you're in top 100, you don't waste it. Like that's the thing to do. I don't know why. I like to be a mechanical engineer. I like the concepts. My dad is a mechanical engineer. He said no way. So I look to something to be creative. I think like the keyword at the time was like I wanted to do something creative to build things, and um, yeah, and I did architecture, and it wasn't easy because it was basically the way at least the architecture. I went to University of Tehran, which is a kind of the school that tries to copy. I mean, 50-50, but 50% try to copy Beaux-Arts. I don't know if I pronounced them right, but it's just like color everywhere and like concept and what do you think, why do we think about function, like what's your concept for everything. And I wanted to change, actually. Like I just like I'm done with this and this is not for me. But then after, I couldn't change because I had to wait for another semester, and during that semester I'm like, okay, I'm here, let's just do this, because I couldn't draw too. That was another thing. I i had no skill like drawing anything, like um, I said, "Oh, let's do it. Let's give it a try. I'm going to leave in 6 months. Whatever I'm going to lose, right? 4 months, 6 months, whatever that semester was." And then I started to like it. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is something new. I didn't know I can do this. And we had a trip to a city in Iran called Yazd, which is this called the city of wind catchers. If you haven't been there, you can just Google it and see. And that was like I saw some vernacular architecture which had a real meaning to it, as it was like really designed to function as a place that people needed to live, to survive technically. And those are the things that kind of resonates with me, like real thing, like
Mm-hmm.
real effect of my decision in real life in a positive way. It was very different from what we would work on at the school when we had design project. It was about the time that the term at the time was green architecture, if I'm not mistaken. So Michael Hopkins won a project in London for a new school, kind of like had some concept of natural ventilation and some diagrams, with those arrows of wish, like you wish this is gonna like how the sun is, this is how the air is. I saw that, and then and I kind of like switched. I said like, this is how I want to design. I want to think about how a building perform, because it's about uh, you know people and all those things, but I couldn't verbalize it as good as I can do now. It was very new. Like in school, I remember like my professor told me like, do you want to be the one who comes up with a concept? And he was like, he was saying concept with a French accent, or do you want to go and just count the number of, radiator panes? I'm like, this is not what I'm talking about. Anyways, so I just did that for my undergrad. Then master's, I went to another school in Iran, and I did my thesis on integrating building simulation into architectural design or something like this, if I'm translating it correctly. And it was like a very interesting approach because that was 2004, 5, 2006 maybe. And again, we use another calendar, so I don't know the years exactly. Maybe I'm off with a year or two, but that should be about the time. So in Persian, the word that we use for simulation and modeling and cloning are the same thing because they are all making something similar to something else, right? The language is very profound and heavy on like poetry and everything, but when it comes to technical stuff, we don't have that many words. So if you want to translate them, it's really hard. So one of the guys on my jury, when I was doing my thesis, he couldn't understand that when I'm talking about simulation is different from 3D modeling. That was the level of knowledge at the time when I did my thesis. So it was just like, what is this thing? But I'm very glad that I did it. Then, yeah, I had my office. I mean, I'm talking too much. Should I stop?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I had my own office at the time doing architecture projects, a lot of construction projects. We made a lot of money on detail design, really. Like, we were good at like going and taking projects that like they wanted to build, they didn't know how to get it built, and then they didn't have enough time. And AutoCAD was the god at the time, and it was me and two of my friends would go in and like get the things done that was supposed to be done like in a month, but just like in 2 nights, 3 nights, or like quickly. But that was the money to the other things that we really want to do, right? Because a small design project doesn't bring that much money, or a small construction project. But I did that, but then I wanted to do environmental building design as part of the project too. So I did a lot of trying to sell it to clients, right? Oh, we're designing this. What if we do daylight? What if we check this thing? What if we check like cooling, heating? And the tools at the time was really hard to use. Like it would take several days to do like a daylight simulation correctly. And people won't pay for it, right? I felt that I really need some validation more than the fact that I did my thesis. And I started to look into master programs that I can take. And I took I went to UPenn. There was a master in environmental building design. And I found one course that was automation. Dr. E, Professor Yoon E, he's now at Champaign, actually, he's teaching there. I found his course. I'm like, okay, I'm going to this university to do this course. That was really my thing, to automate this stuff, get a degree so I can come back and say, I have a degree in this, like we can make business out of it and do it seriously. And then I came to US, I did the school, and I loved the program because it was only 1 year. So I just could go back to work. As I said, I like really like real things. Like I'm not that interested in when things get really abstract from real world. And like instead of going back, I was here. I got an offer from Adrian Smith Gordon Gill, actually in Chicago. I worked and lived and worked in Chicago for 2 years. Great memories. Did a lot of Grasshopper things because the scale of the projects, automated a lot of things in Grasshopper. I didn't know Grasshopper that well. And in school, I picked it up, but very limited. I was using it totally wrong. But at SGG, this is
2008.
This is 2010, I think, because it took some time before, like, between graduating and coming to US. I worked for a few years in Iran. It's 2010, 2011, I think, when I started.
Grasshopper was in early stage at that time.
It wasn't still, wasn't that big. But then I had a few people around, and I didn't know Rhino too. I was really good in AutoCAD, but absolutely had no idea what Rhino was. And I learned Grasshopper first, so I still don't know Rhino that well. And yeah, we had a few, like Ben Rains was there, like I forgot the name of the rest of people, but they were good in Grasshopper, like in a way of practical Grasshopper, not just making geometry. Of like they like, and then I did some stuff there, learned more. Then we got to the point of like it got ridiculous how we could automate the stuff. Then I was on the competition team, as they call it, working on so many projects, short amounts of time, automating everything from like radiation study to just generating the building, like facade generation, anything and everything you can think about. And that made me good in Grasshopper because I had to do things fast in a short amount of time. And I picked up Python because Grasshopper had its own limitations. And yeah, I did a lot of automations, like a lot of integration, a lot of things that people now do for their thesis that I'm just like, you should have stopped doing this. I've like, it's so 2011. Just let's move on. But now they're getting easier. There are more plugins and everything. So yeah, one of the things was I realized automation without education is not good. It's really actually can go backwards. We did a project at the office, and I ran this like hundreds of optimizations for a building, and then to show to people, being young and naive, to say like computer can do something better than you, I asked people to put numbers for the parameters that I was trying to optimize. I said like, okay, if you're a designer, you know better. What's the parameters? Put it in. And they would put it in, and I would a comparison between what computer came up and then what they would came up, and then their thing wasn't making it. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like validating, oh, computer can do better than you. But then at the same time, what I missed was by doing this, I'm doing this service to these people who have been in the design field for ages, and they know a lot of things that my computer doesn't know. So what happened was from the next project, I had this thing of people coming to me and saying, Mostapha, can you optimize this? I'm like, what are we optimizing? They're like, just optimize this thing. Like, I can't optimize. Like, what do you want? Like, oh, what's the best orientation? I'm like, what's the location? I'm like, city, this city. I'm like, okay, like this. Like, how do you know that? Like, I know where the sun is. You don't optimize for finding the sun. And that was like a very important moment, I think, in my career, that I realized if I don't do it right, all this automation stuff can actually be putting us back by doing things, giving things to people that they don't understand and then using it the wrong way. And that was the Ladybug moment for me of we need something that is like for people where the sun is, how is the radiation? Let me check the sky. You don't need even to run radiation study. Like get a sense, like where the sun is in summer, where the sun is in winter. Sorry. When you need cooling, when you need heating. When is the right time of, like putting shades? These like very basic questions that I realize people don't know. And also they want to run optimization to understand, like you don't need optimization. This is just look at weather data and you know it. And that was a Ladybug. And then Honeybee so after that.
You wanted to create Ladybug to validate the design intuition, or people who don't have any sustainability background, this could become like a go-to tool? Like
it was both in a way, but the first one was I have a slide why I did Ladybug, and I can go through the list. So the first one was I wanted to educate more people because it was just so bad. I mean, it's still so bad. It's not that. It's just like the amount that people don't know about the topic is just frustrating and sad, honestly. And I wanted them to have a tool to, if they have a question and if they're interested, to be able to see it quickly. I wanted the tool to be more integrated to the design environment. So there were two other tools. It was not like nothing existed, but they were like outside where we would do the design. So you had to go somewhere, check something, come back, try to do the thing. I mean, I was always obsessed with some path and some vectors and, try to show people like this is where the sun is coming. So this is if you do shape like this. And I couldn't do it. Was really hard. The math is really hard if you really want to do it on paper for a lot of people. And so I wanted to automate that. And that's like Grasshopper component for SunPath that came out of it. So that was the two. And the third one for me was, let's just automate where the sun is, radiation, sunlight average, so we can talk about more important things. At the time, you would get hired to run like 5 radiation studies. I'm not making this up, like 9. It was like you would have like a legit contract between an architect and like a consultant to do like 9 radiation studies, and I still don't understand why those annual radiation studies are useful. They're not. They're like, oh, we want to find where to put PVs. Look at where the sun is. You just know where to put PVs, people. Like, come on. Anyway, so like if you have context, yes, there's shading, but just do a quick shadow size, that kind of thing. So I wanted to have a packet, and that ended up being Ladybug. Just like, let's do this quickly. Now let's talk about why. Because if you can do it quickly, then you spend a lot of time talk about how, like how we do this, how we do this, how we do that. But if you can automate those things so people don't say how, they say, okay, we can do this. So what are we going to do and why are we going to do? That's the time that we can have, I think, some useful conversation on the topic. And yeah, that was Ladybug. And then I had Honeybee when I released Ladybug, but I again, like my style of like, I wanted to do it right. And then I wanted to make sure people are educated enough. I didn't want to give something people to do things wrong. And between that, I changed job. I went from front-end Thomas City, part of the now it's called Core Studio. And yeah, that was a great team. And before going there, they knew all the projects that I had. So it was an agreement that I can work on my projects as long as they are related to our office projects. I did a lot. Great team, Ben House, Jonathan Schumacher. Now I'm going to forget some people, and this is going to be really bad. But yeah, everyone, like Anna was there. I don't know, like Nick. I'm just trying to, what was his name? His family name is Tam, I forgot his name. Like very good, like there's a great team there. And we worked together a lot. Matt Noggle was great. He was there like during the time that I went there. We did a Design Explorer. We actually, people don't give Matt enough credit for that. But yeah, I built it. I wrote the code, but the initial concept was between Matt Noggle and myself. We're sitting there and said like, okay, if we have this thing of like power coordinates, and then what we're missing is geometry, and what if we can see it and like it and all those. And yeah, like that was it. And Ben House also joined the conversation that day. I remember the three of us. So at the time then I released Honeybee, I met Chris Mackey too. Chris, just out of nowhere, like he was doing an internship there. I didn't know that he's also going to, he was part of a different department at QT, but then I only, like before that, I knew Chris, like who's this guy who's really interested and writes really long emails. So that was Chris for me. He was like, he was long, no, but good and long, not like, but he is really detailed oriented for good reasons. And then I met him, like, oh, he's sitting on actually one floor below. And I remember like he was working on a project and he asked me some questions, and I saw like he's doing everything with Grasshopper. And I was like, this is not the way to do it. You should do it in Python. And he's like, I don't know Python. Like, let me write a few lines for you. And then Chris, in a very Chris way, came upstairs like next day, and you could see like he hasn't slept that night or something. It's just like,
Oh
okay,
my God.
I'll do something. And oh my God, he had like a full packet of the thing that he developed. And yeah, that was like, we released Honeybee together. Chris is I think Chris and maybe one other people are the only ones who used the Honeybee that I never released, the first version of Honeybee. And then yeah, like we finished, by the time that I released Honeybee, Chris already made contribution to Ladybug. All the comfort stuff comes from his work. And now like everything, like Chris is doing all the Grasshopper side. And yeah, like we did Honeybee, I think, Honeybee Daylight, then Honeybee Energy came out. Then it became too much work that I had to make a decision of either I have to do this or I have to do my normal work. And I had to leave TT, take a job at UPenn as an adjunct professor. Or no, actually my topic was something else. I don't know, this research something. But what I was doing teaching, and then I had some extra time to do a different development. Autodesk was interested for me to do some migration to Dynamo and work on that. And that became the base for building, to rewriting everything outside Grasshopper. Because the initial one that we call Legacy was, I just developed it on my own. or like create with like very limited of knowledge. That was, I say, like that was a prototype that became much more successful than that what it should have been. And now we're like, okay, now that we have to build it real. And that's what the new ones are. So I wrote that, I tested with Dynamo. We wrote another version, we called it Honeybee Plus, which is kind of like now is going to go out. And then our new iteration is what we call LBT, plugins for Ladybug tools. But at the same time, while I was doing that, the idea was like we take it out of Grasshopper, then we can do a lot of other things, including cloud computing. Then in 2 years when I was at Penn teaching, at some point it became obvious, just like I have to do this full time. It was like it's a make it or just like leave it. So again, I left my job at Penn and I started Ladybug Tools as a full company myself, consulting mainly when we started. And the idea was like I'll start, if it works out, then Chris will join. And while we were doing that, a SBIR grant came, like an opportunity, and then another one came. We applied for 2 of them to get one, and we got both. And they're like, okay, this is great. So let's just build something. And we wanted to build Ladybug Tools Cloud at the time, which became Pollination and what it is right now. So we got that grant. Then we had a follow-up grant that we had, and like with the help of from grant and consulting, we started hiring more people. Now we are 8 on a good day. We can, depending how you count it, we're 8 people, 8 to 10. And yeah, that was it. Like then Chris left his job, and we're building Pollination. We have been working it now for about 3 years, I think. And Rhino plugin is going to be paid like starting this Monday. Revit is going to go after that. Pollination is going to go a little bit after that, I think. Yep, exciting times for us. I think like that's the kind of a full story, I think, and took 23 minutes.
That's so exciting. And
you can just stop me at any point. I talk a lot. So if you have something, I don't have to say all this stuff. So whatever you like.
No, it's totally fine. Like I think like Ladybug, I believe is like one of the biggest successful AEC open source project like I have seen, and I wanted to know like to develop such open source project, like is resource a problem or is funds a problem, or like why are we not seeing such scalable and large adoption other alternative like open source projects in AEC?
I don't know a good answer. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. Maybe like you need someone from outside who have tried and it didn't work for them. I mean, now it's just I see the IFC like Blender Beam people starting to have a real movement, and I think they are more open source oriented than I have ever been. I love open source. We do open source work. There was a clear decision to make Ladybug open source, and I did it. But I don't think I ever walked around the industry and talked about like everything should be open source, or like open source is great, which is great. But I was mostly interested for me, okay, maybe like I just talk my side of like why I did it and why I think it was successful fairly. The reason I did it open source because as a user, I have been always using these tools I want to edit, and I couldn't trust, and especially in the field of environmental building design simulation, I wanted to make sure I built something that other people can go and see everything and check it, and if you know more, you can do more. I love tools that if you're better at it, you can do something that other people cannot do. It's just like, imagine like a game, right? If a game is, I'm not a gamer also, I'm using the game as an analogy, but if a game is so easy, people are not going to be that interested. If the guy who starts today is as good as me, like I'm not going to be interested in that game. Like I should be rewarded for being better. And a lot of tools that out there is just like, especially when they say it's very easy something, it's just pointless. Like it just gives you like the same thing out that like you can't ask your real question. It's just like they give you what's available. I hate that. Like really, like it's not going to help us design better buildings. So yeah, I wanted the tool to be really extendable, flexible. People can do anything and everything. And like we found this code actually from the developer of or creator of Atari, that he said like the most successful games that they had is easy to start, but impossible to master. I
Mhm.
think that's kind of thing that I liked about Ladybug. I've like built something that's easy to start. That you have two components, you get something, but you can just build it. The more you work, the better you get. The better you are, the better tool. So the limitation is you, not the tool. Like the limitation of your level of knowledge, how much you want to learn, how good you want to be. And I think that was part of the thing that attracted people who really cared and wanted to be better and wanted to do it right. And I got lucky. I found Chris Mackey. So let's be honest. Without Chris, I don't think it would have happened in this scale. Like he came in, and I think we balanced each other pretty well. Balance out, I think is the right word. But yeah, we worked together pretty well, and he was dedicated. We started doing this, and we, I think, always kept the community open and kept everything transparent and stayed very like committed to why we're doing this. We want to do it right. There is a lot of noise out there. There is a lot of, oh, like it's easy, everyone can do it. And now we're selling pollination, so everyone's just like, there is a lot of pressure on me on like, let's go out there and just say it's easy, make it easier or something. We don't do that. That's not us. Like, if you want to do it right, you have to take your time and learn it. This is a new skill set. I used to use the driving license analogy for this. You have a car, if it goes fast, you don't have a license, you're going to kill yourself, you're going to damage other things. Now use the food analogy for this. So it's like fast food. Like you eat fast food once a week, twice a week. I don't know, once a month, maybe it's good. Like it gives you good feeling. You eat fast food every day. Yeah, just watch the documentaries on that. It's it's not the way to do it. I think that helped. And then uh, the community was like the main thing. People picked it up. People started helping, and not everything was successful. Like we did it for Dynamo, and community didn't we couldn't make a community around it. Maybe because we don't use Dynamo as actively as we use Grasshopper for our projects. And then Dynamo at the time was breaking everything that we were doing every release. So it was just so hard to keep up, and we just stopped doing it. Yep. So it's just like it's. I think like the other thing that has been successful is like the natural way of doing it. That we did it when it was the right time. We didn't have this metrics of like, what is your monthly something? What is this thing? Are you growing enough fast? Like, what is it
KPI.
like twice as something as something? And like, no, and like, I don't care. If
Mhm.
you're thinking to be in the game for long enough, it's about like, my thing right now is just like, are we going to make enough money for the team that we have and make profit to be
Mhm.
enough long enough in the game to do it right? I'm not thinking about like doubling in size in like 6 months. Why would I? Like, do I need it? If it comes like in 6 months, we feel we really need that, we can do that. But that's not how I think. That's not how we run the office, and that's not how we run Ladybug Tools development.
Mhm. So in the last decade, you saw for people hiring separate contractors to do analysis and simulation to education universities teaching Ladybug and in their courses. Some of it not like there's decent amount of population who still don't know Grasshopper or who aren't using. So I want to know like if for the massive adoption, is the UI UX a problem, is onboarding a problem, or because even AI is committing to sustainability and like 2030 rules, do we need more regulations to get to mandate it, or
I think the first thing is we need to get real. It's just the problem is we're not real. Like the whole discussions, it's just a lot of it is noise and just feeling good and doing good. Check 10 years ago buildings, how they got built, how they looked, how they performed. Check now, how much has changed. People are happy about like, oh, like we're submitting some numbers, which is not, by the way, validated, and no one knows, and like you're accepting anything from any simplified model that people can do just because you want to keep, oh, we're so green, we're doing great. Look at us, we're thinking about this. But then do you change your design? Are you committed to change the way your building look? Are you committed to change your understanding of beauty, your understanding of design, your understanding of what would be your goal of like how the building look like? Because if you get serious, it's going to affect how you design and how you think. Are you ready to sell that to your client? No, you're not. You just want to do the same thing that you have been doing, but just now, like there this presentation, I'm not going to name, but like they're showing like a fully glass tower in the middle of desert as the camera goes and like the animation is just like, and we built this sustainable, amazing thing in the middle of desert. And I'm like, have you been in a desert for a day? I worked in a desert for like 2 years, year and a half. Have you been there? Do you know like what are you building? And you're like, and then because you don't want to change the look, you're just buying like more expensive glass with more high reflection. And like a lot of technologies that what happens in like 20 years when the glass is not performing the way, like, it's just, I don't know, like, are you hiring someone to just go all the way and change the whole thing for like 800 meters tower? I don't, it's just, I think that the problem, generally speaking, is we're not real about this topic. And I think architecture in general, I mean, I'm a little bit pessimist in it, but because that's a good thing. I'm an architect, technically, like I went to architect, and all those I can say that easily. That yeah, like it's just, I don't buy it. I don't buy people really care. There are some people who really care. I'm not saying that people don't really care, but I'm just saying the whole as an industry, the portion that who really care is not big enough to see a real change in the industry. Maybe regulation can help, but then regulation needs to be serious. Like like once in a while we have this thing come out and like, oh, this rating system doesn't work. I'm like, oh, surprise, surprise. Why? It's just obvious. Like you don't need all this stuff. It's just, but then those things say, oh no, it's because how people, there are like so many things that you can play with. And there are standards that we know, like they're more scientific, like Passive House. And then when they come to US, they have to change it because like the market is not ready for that level of like. So that's my thing. Like if you're real, then things are going to be different. And my job is to focus on the people who really care, the people who want to make the difference. Even they're in school, even they're in office, they are in my position like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever I was in school, and they say, this is how we should do it. I want them to have the tools, to have the infrastructure to say, this is how we should do it, and this is why. And I can model it for you like in a day or two, instead of me like having to build everything from scratch to say, maybe this is a good idea, but like, oh my God, now I don't have any design. My job is just to support them and hope as an industry, like I hope like things gets real, because it's not real. It's like all this thing is so much talk, so much noise, so much like now, God, give me a break. And like we have this thing of like, because this is so unrelated, and I think like they feel it. Every new metric that comes up, they have to jump on it and put it as part of the thing. And like now we have to do even more complicated ways of modeling metrics that never matter. Like we're in a level of like everything leaks, like our construction is just so bad, the thing, right? And we don't want to go in the standards that like we have tight windows or doing it right. We want everything to be glassy because that's how it is. We want to do all these things that we want to do. And like we can easily fix those, like check these things, like make sure we get enough daylight, like make sure we don't have extra. There are easy ways to know that. We don't do that, and they're like, oh, let's model it for like all these dynamic things and come. And what about my feeling when I'm feeling the like, well, come on, that's not for us. We're not there yet. Let's be realistic. We're still building buildings for ages the same way. That's my thing. Like if people get real, we have the technology, we have the knowledge, we have the science. Everything is there. I hope those people who are in the industry and still care, still are part of the teams that make a difference. I hope we can support them, and I hope we can find enough of them to make a difference. And I'm one of those believers that think changes is slow, and the right things happens, like it takes time. I know it's like so not a startup / American way of like, oh, we need to disrupt this. Like we don't have enough time. Yes, we don't have enough time, but like you just trying to push it, it's not going to work too. Like you have, it's just like, it's a thing. You have to build the whole infrastructure for it, both on the technology side, cultural side. You need a lot of education and awareness to get like a normal end user, a normal client to buy into this and understand it. And there's a lot of noise out there that makes things really hard. It's just like so much noise that it's hard for people to see through the noise even. So I think that's part of our job too, like to just make sure like we're still very clear and like what we're trying to do through all this noise and why we're doing it the way we're doing it, and hope for the best. I think that's what we're doing. Am I the most negative person you had on this call ever? I'm very hopeful.
You're the most realistic stating the facts. Okay, but I think it also requires like a mindset change. Like I'm guilty of this myself, where I see on Instagram renders of buildings, and like most of the times people ask, "Oh, which software did you use? How did you make it cool?" And even even in the industry, like there are people who have like very top down approach. Okay, I'm just gonna do a sketch, you make a building, you make it sustainable. Like even changing the mindset of those top people, that okay, you need a different approach in the way you make sustainable buildings. Like I don't know, like it's gonna be difficult to change like such a large population with such mindset.
Yeah, it may not be done by architects. I don't know. Like, I mean, it may not be done by architects simply. It may be done by someone else who comes to the industry and have a different approach of. I mean, I understand why, like we can talk about incentives and like why it doesn't happen and all those too. But I don't, and I have said that I'm not committed to architecture, or I'm committed to buildings. Whoever
Mm-hmm.
is here to make buildings better, I'm committed to help them. And if architects are part of it, some are, we are committed here to help. If you're not, let's be real, like just, I'm not going to waste my time trying to help you make virtual unreality that you have been doing for a lot of years, like with all these renders that they have anything and everything to do with anything but the real building. They're just like so much, how we know how to make a render looks good and like
Yeah.
not being real and like this really type of thing. And that's part of an important part of selling the project. I understand why people do that. But then you have to get real about other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mix of different things. I When I started this, something was good. It wasn't what they call it. Right now, it's like what's the thing that like now everyone is sustainability everything, but it was cool to be about. When I started, it wasn't cool even. I told you what my professor told me. It wasn't even cool, and that was good because if you were into it, you were into it for real. You
Mm-hmm.
really meant it. You were really doing it. Even like when we started Ladybug, I think it wasn't as cool as it is now to do this stuff. One of the challenges is like it's now hype. A lot of it is hype. A lot of it is just like you have to just do it, like Instagram kind of thing. And good things in long term takes like long term dedication to things that may or may not be fun. And I think that's the another challenge that we have, right? It's just like those people on the top, it's painful to change the way they have been doing design. It's
Mm-hmm.
painful for them to sell it differently. And honestly, if the way they're doing it is works in their terms, it's like it just works, they can sell their projects. They don't see the necessity to change, right? Then it comes, oh, for regulation, we have to submit this. And guess what? There are like a lot of workarounds. And, we are here telling people, oh, this takes work, this takes time. I mean, we're making it a lot easier with apps. Pollination apps are just bringing everything to the CAD environment and the web at the same. I think it's magical. I mean, I have not said that, I think, about anything else that we have developed, but these apps are just my thing. I think it will bring customizable automation, like highly perfectly well done, developed, customizable automation to end users who wouldn't have access to it. But at the same time, again, for based on what you're trying to do, you need to go through this training of. It doesn't mean to go to school back for like a year or something. Training is like take the time, educate yourself about the metrics, educate about what's happening, and then use it. You have to go through this. And then on the other side of the market, there are tools that saying like, oh, we give you energy, we give you embodied carbon, we give you cost, we give you anything and everything that you want, and you have to learn nothing. It's just a single click. Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing for the fact that they don't tell you that's wrong. Like the result that you get if you don't spend the time. No amount of AI, machine learning with the data sets that we have right now can predict what you have in your mind, which is not affected in the tools that you're drawing. And by the way, taking an analytical model from those, even from the Beam software that we use, is still totally broken. And that's why we have a Revit plugin. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't need to develop the Revit plugin the way we did it, but we had to do it because there's no other tool to do it for you.
Correct.
Anyways, yeah, it's I think it's just a matter of time. And my job, again, I'm very about what I can fix for the people who really care in a smaller scale. And then I hope they basically do this effect of, that's what we did for Ladybug tools too, right? Like you just focus on people who you can help, you know they need it, and you know they will make a difference. And then the more of you, the more of the effect. And at some point, it's just like, oh, we have a community, we're making a difference. We educated a lot of people. We made a generation of people, or by we, like we educated each other of things that was not possible before. I think that's when the change happens slowly. We have to see a lot has changed for better. Again, like our end buildings haven't changed much, which annoys me. Like
Mhm.
I feel like we should have done better. But overall, I think like from where it was like 10 years ago up to now, this is much better now. Like a lot of topics you can discuss and people understand much better. So yeah, hopefully in 10 years from now, if the world doesn't end, we will be in a better place. I hope pollination to be part of it. I really hope pollination can help us to get there faster. Not faster in a startup way of like, we just use this and everything is going to change in a week. No, like faster as in we do it together. We just like, we build the knowledge base, we build the community, we build the right tools. And at some point, it's easier to go to those people on the top and say, hey, this decision that you're making is going to affect the comfort of these people in this building by this percentage. If we can
Mhm.
just change this to that, we can save this much and we can sell it for a better price. And we can show this to the client. So I think they understand, they appreciate. And yes, the look of the building maybe changes a little bit. And maybe you can just sell it at that point. And I don't know, like we have to see. And one thing that to make a distinction, I think the whole industry spends a lot of time talking about this uh, 5, 10 buildings every year that are like everyone is working. You go every conference they're showing, but that's not the whole industry, right?
Yep.
That's just
Yeah.
what we talk about. And I'm trying to reach out to the rest. I'm trying to make sure the rest of the building here I'm living in, the one in front of me, they have the minimum that they need. Uh, they have the tools in their hand if they're interested. And again, trying to get to them, trying to get to the end user, like trying to make sure people living in these houses, like they can just enjoy like what they paid for. They don't right now. Honestly, they don't. I mean, like, including myself.
Yeah, like Daniel Davis mentioned, like we need like to serve for the fat middle of the buildings where like not extreme buildings, not too, yeah,
Right.
like there's a big chunk where we need tools. But I wanna like you said before that okay, you started Ladybug, then you got grants, then you developed various features, and now Pollination. It sounds a smooth ride, but I think it's not. So like, tell us what were the challenges, like what was the downtime, whether where there's some features you had to kill because of the time constraint or resource constraint.
I mean, we as I said, like Dynamo is an example. Butterfly is kind of like on hold, is surviving on its own. Um, it was easy when we started. It was mostly understanding what are the most important decisions that people need to make on during the design process or like for buildings in construction, and we focused on those. We made sure like we can provide them, and that was the way of like doing the development. And then after that, when we had like the basic thing there and I could tell people, okay, you can do it this way, there was always a way to do it. Then we started to think about, okay, can we bring more people, can we give more people access to this? And then the metric from there has been like, what are the tools that people are using the most? And at that time they need to make the right decision. Are we supporting them? Can we support them? Can we do it the right way? Um, and naturally there are tools that we tested didn't work. It's just we just leave them. I don't think um, we we don't have like a moment of, oh my god, this didn't happen as much, because when we start we're very humble of, we are testing this as a first iteration for most of what we do, and we'll see how it works. And then if it doesn't work, naturally we say, okay, it didn't work, so let's do something else. I We have yet to put something of like, we should get this to work this way for this. No, why? Like if and now that Ladybug Tools is there, I feel much more comfortable, because I say if you're
Mhm.
really interested and you really want to do it, there is a tool. Like it's not the easiest to put together because of the UI and everything, and we're making that easier with Pollination. But there is a tool. You have a way to do it. So yeah, it's just like, okay, this, and again, like one thing, like I say all the time is like, if you survive long enough, you get a second chance.
Mm.
So the goal is like, if I do something and it doesn't work, or if we do it, like if we get it to work, it's not what we want. If we do it right, good enough to survive long enough, we get another chance. We got like triple chance on redeveloping Ladybug tools. We got like two chance to do Revit plugin again. Like for Rhino, we did like 3 times. I think internally we changed like how we wanted to do it. And at some point, you feel comfortable to put it out there. Usually, that's like our second and a half version. Kind of like that comes out there. I feel like, oh, this is good enough for people to use. And we have been very blessed by having user in a community which gives us feedback right away. So as soon as we put things out there, it's just like comes our way. It just makes it easy. We don't have to think, oh, what's the next thing to do? But yeah, to answer your question, I think the one thing that we did, I can say that was a really sad moment, like really hard moment for myself, was our payment infrastructure. And I want to bring it up because if there are other people who want to do payment structure, and if you want to use a Stripe, think twice, because they collect your taxes. They don't collect taxes for all the countries. If you want to do international sales, they have a very limited service for collecting, and they don't submit the taxes for you in that country. So if you sell in India, it's 18% tax for selling online, and you are eligible, or whatever the term is, required to pay the taxes to the government in India from your first sales tax, which means you have to have a representation, legal representation in India, or foreign. It's very complicated. You don't want to do that. And Stripe is not clear about that until you start the sales. They collect the tax. Even in the US, it's very complicated to do that. So I made the mistake of not doing my research fully on that. We implemented it initially with Stripe, and then we started, it put us back like for about 3 weeks. And that hurt a lot on my side. I think that was like one of the mistakes that I made, which was costly.
And I know you mentioned briefly about the advice. So, are there any technical or business lessons you want to share for people who are thinking about doing an AEC tech startup or open source development?
Open source. So one thing I can say is, if you do open source project, open source has a lot of good things, but selling is not a good thing of it. Like selling open source technology is hard, and it's much harder than a closed source for several reasons. That's another call. I don't know. Like, are we going to finish it like right on at 2, or like do we have extra time?
We're flexible.
Okay, we can go more. Okay, so I mean, but yeah. If you do open source is great for like building community. If you can, open source is great for doing it right. I think open source is the best way of developing software together still, because if you can bring the right talent in, like, I mean, our example, like different people came and shared different expertise that they had. And at some point, like Ladybug tools is something that I have no idea about parts of it. And there's a trust culture, people have to make it, and you have to make it through the community. Like you have to build it. We used to release it, like let the community test it in WIP. If it was good enough, like then you could make it to real distribution. Some tools never made it. Some tools came there and like we killed them because they were not good enough. That's open source. Great things about open source. But if you want to build a technology around open source, I know there is a lot of noise out there about like, oh, people are paying this much for this open source technology, A, B, talking about AI, talking about, go and check how much money is in the AI. Like this company for Apache Arrow, for like their not even its initial thing, it's not even like round one or the first round, they made like 100 million or something, like just to get it started. They raised that much, and they're fully open source. Yes, if there is an industry that gives you like 100 million like to do your things, and there is like a scale of usage. Again, building industry is huge, like a lot of money. People talk about that, but there are not that many, like, because open source is important for developers, like because it's a distribution method, right? It's like you distribute the code with source code. For a lot of end users, open source means nothing. If your value proposition is open, like you have a problem in your company. If your value proposition of your company is like having open source technology, you will have a problem, because your value proposition should be something else. Like your value proposition should be solving some real problems for that people in the industry, and they don't necessarily align, and they're not going to pay you because it's open source or they feel good or something. And at least in the industry, because I have been through this, trying to do Ladybug tools as an open source kind of project, getting money from all the companies, they want to own you for a little bit of money, because that's the culture, right?
Yeah.
Like this concept of, oh, watch Google, this company, like Apple, all this paid money and Python is developing. Yes, what's the scale of Python? Who are using it? Look, Google, they have like hundreds of open source projects. They're not like nicest company or anything, but they are in the business. They understand that's part of their business. They put money into their business. They're not doing it for good. They might market it as that. That might be part of it, but it's not the only thing. In the building industry, like there are some grants coming and going. There are like some of them. We talked. I'm not going to name, but we talked to the grant. They reached out. Oh, we have this grant. I'm like, how much is it? And the number. I'm like, dude, if I want to do that as a contract, that's the number I could. Like, you want to give me that money, get a lot of marketing. We're supporting this company and all those. And especially if you're building company as a software company is expensive.
Correct.
When you hire people, they have other opportunities, right, to get paid, and that's expensive market. And you have to sometimes like compete with like Google and other companies, like the money that they pay for the developers. And running that with like the way the industry wants to support open source, it's just like a joke. I wish at some point I have to do like when it's long enough to do like what are the numbers that people offered us, and like it's just a joke. Like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And if you want to do that, but still if you have good reasons for doing open source and you want to make a business out of it, make sure you make a clear line between your open source project and your commercial product. Pollination, for example, is our commercial product. If something is open on Pollination side, it's just open because it happened to be, because it was good for our product. There is no intention of making it open or free, right? If anything, on Ladybug tools, everything is open because that's a project. We want people to break. We want people to innovate. We want people to do the best. We want people to push the boundaries. Pollination, I want all that, but I want it to be stable. I want to make sure enterprise solutions can trust it. I want to run my deadline through the plugins and make sure it works, which it does because I use it for our consulting project. And that's when I feel comfortable selling it to people, because I'm like, I use it works. I have done projects like models that people couldn't fix in any other tool, and I fixed it in our Rhino plugin like in few hours. I know it works. And that's the value proposition of Pollination, and that's what we're selling. I think this is very important. It's very hard, and we have done it wrong. I didn't talk about that period between Ladybug tools and Pollination that we figured that we tried to get a sponsorship from offices in the industry, and everyone is using Ladybug tools. We didn't have that problem. Like, if you have an open source project that they don't use, I don't know how you do it. But we had a project, they were using it. We had it was very easy to go talk to everyone. Everyone knew us. Like, it wasn't just like, we didn't even have to do cold emails. We knew those people. We're just like, oh, we're doing this. We need your support. A lot of them, they wanted to help us. They couldn't figure it out. They're like, what are we going to, are we going to give money to you? And then you develop something that our competition is going to use. And I know everyone's just like, that's what happens for Python. I just told you, we are not that industry. Like, software is not our business. Like, in our industry, that's not the thing that people sell. Like, show me a office in the AEC that has real open source project that people are using in the industry. Then think about Google, Facebook, and check the number of open source projects that they have that their competition is using. They are working together. That's a different world. Again, similar to the thing that I said about standards. We have to get real, who we are, where we are. I know the numbers you can put that, oh, this is how many trillion dollars is the building industry. But how many of that $1 trillion are the people who would pay for your technology? How many of that $1 trillion with your technology will make double money? How many of the people listen to you because of that technology? Okay, I have a guest speaker here. It's her bedtime. Hi, Hannah.
So cute.
Yeah, she's not happy. She's like, let's go. You have to put me to bed. What happened? Mama, 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 mama. What happened? This time.
Multitasking.
Yeah, she's just like, okay, thank you. Here you go. Hannah. She's like, who is this guy? Anyways, I think because of Hannah's deadline, we should wrap it up
Yeah.
sooner. Yeah, she's really sleepy.
Yeah. I think like this was quite useful. One thing I would like to comment is like I have been structural engineer and like used to be very cautious that if I do one wrong assumption, like it's gonna affect the building safety. So even in pollination, like ladybug, like all the calculation and the assumption in like using like it's affecting the whole building calculation. The testing is like like a big scary thing for me. Like you gotta make every situation count.
I think that's what when I say customizable automation, that's what I mean. Like, because you make assumptions and you have to make sure like people can see those assumptions and they can edit it. Even if you close the calculation, all those assumptions should be accessible. Sorry, I'm moving people like watching this because of him. But yeah, otherwise you basically, there is a good chance that you're making an automation that makes garbage in, garbage out on a stroke. And there are a lot of them out there. Like, and the problem with buildings, the challenge with buildings is it takes a very long time and it goes like so many iterations before it gets built. So by the time that that thing happens, it's already too late. And that's what bothers me. That's what my concern. That like, how can I make sure people understand the risk that they are introducing by using the tools that they don't see what it does? And God, like I can do a full presentation on like how early stage of design doesn't justify um, using the simplified tools, because if you use something that never crashes, never gives you any errors, and like whatever you put at it, it runs, it's modeling something else. You didn't put time to make your building to represent your intentions correctly. If it doesn't tell you that, you are modeling something else. You're making decision based on some result for something else, and this is really dangerous. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone is going to go to jail because the predicted daylight was not correct. But I think people are going to go probably to jail if the systems are going to fail at some point because you put a glass that you. I don't know what will happen in the future, but at some point, I hope things can be traceable. I don't know. Like this vertical companies was. I'm hopeful. Like we get a successful vertical company who has real incentives to make things better because they get the money out of it. So that I think will help a lot of things, right? A lot of things. But for us to make sure things doesn't go bad, we give people access to see and change those. We do our due diligence, and I think that's the thing. We're not the fast food company, and we don't lie to people that these things are easy or you don't need to know anything or you don't need consultant. We just like we need all to work together. These things, if they were as easy as people say, we would have resolved them years ago. Yes,
Yeah.
I can see that you can run more simulations. I can't see you're building better buildings yet. Yeah, these are two different things. Let's. I mean, my thing is like we have to work together to build better buildings, and that's not an easy thing. That's not a quick thing. We have to go through the pain together. We have to support each other. And as I said, this together can be. Is I don't talk about only about the industry, like users, builders, like all of them. Like we need everyone around the table to do this together. And I think like that's why we start Pollination, to take it out, like put it on the road. Like build an infrastructure, build a platform that we can do this. That was the thing, right? We couldn't even do this. Just we knew, and that's one of the other things that if people want to start a company in the industry, they should know. You do like I don't know, a website for like car or something. The whole infrastructure is built for you. You just go and say, I want this technology with this technology, put it with this technology. I'm going to use this DB, put it on this service. You're done. Do iterations, and that's what most of the books are written for, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do building industry. Like think about it. Like we did HV, JSON, and all those high-powered elements. Like every Spackle did they thing because this is not there. Like every company is just like we need to. And I know like IFC people are there. IFC. IFC was not and is not easy to use. I know you might be able to use it, but it can't get my job done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are slowly building that. But I'm just saying, if you're a certain company, consider a lot of time to build an infrastructure to
Yeah.
get you to the point that that's just like count that into account. It takes a lot of time if you want to do it right, especially a lot of infrastructure work that no one cares about and no one wants to pay for. That's the thing. No one wants to pay for that. Everyone wants to, like, like we have this tree thing that we say. Everyone wants to pay for the fruit. Like, do you have
Yeah.
an apple? No one wants to wait there for us, like, to make the tree to just like all these years. And especially in the US with like this American mentality of like, getting to profit as quickly as possible. And like, it's just, you see, like, even like infrastructure bill is just like a thing of like, people like, bridges are going to just come down, people. Like, we need somebody to fix them. Like, I don't want to fix them. Why should I pay for it right now? But it's just infrastructure is hard. No one wants to pay for it. So yeah, you have either to make money from somewhere else to build it, or just like if you do assumption on how much it costs you, put that in your account because yeah, I hope we, at least for environmental building design, I hope pollination to be the thing that like from zero to a company it takes you a few weeks with like pollination apps. That's what we're building. We're building the whole infrastructure to help the next company don't go through all the pain, so they can focus on like delivering to the market as quickly as they want and get something accurate. She's not happy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Your baby is very cute. I don't know.
Thank
Wanna
you. Yeah, yeah, time to go. I think like she wants to go to bed, and you can see her face. She's like, I can try to put her to sleep here, but she's usually like, no, I want my own bed. Right, Hannah?
She's
Yeah,
very.
right. Thank you. She's
Uh,
like, no, like I don't want to go here. I want to watch the sky and see what you're doing. Okay,
we
let's
we're
wrap it
talking
up.
about
Like,
AEC, which is complicated. It's yeah. I think this was quite insightful. Thanks a lot, Mustafa, for all the thoughts, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing. And I hope
thank you.
I'll
Thank you for
study
having
all the
me.
infrastructure.
Yeah, it has been a while for me to do this stuff, so it was refreshing to do so. I think we should do another follow up for real pollination at some point.
Yeah,
I didn't even talk about pollination, but that's up to you. I know like you have a lot of people at the show, but maybe I should show real pollination, or people can actually check our user meetups or just reach out.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Hopefully, for
where to
part
find.
two, decoding pollination, and we can do like technical architecture
Yeah,
discussion and stuff.
I like to do that actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are at a very good point to present those to people. So let's do that at some point. Okay then. And
See
bye
you. Have a
bye.
nice rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.